Hey friends, hope you all are doing well and welcome back to day number 11. Today we are going to talk about zones. So let's go straight into our setup and right here under the pay policies, right into the work rule building blocks. And last time on day number 10, we've seen overtimes and now we are going to create zones. Again, this one is going to be an interesting topic because more often than not, you will be using these zones for multiple things, especially for shift allowances and holiday pays. So we're going to see how to create holiday zones. Prior to that, if you haven't had a chance to subscribe to this channel, if you want to learn more about Kronos, please do subscribe and hit that bell button so that you get notified for the upcoming videos. And also, if you haven't seen the first 10 days of the video, I'm going to put the playlist link in the description so that you can go through them. That being said, let's go into the zones and see how we can create the zone rule. Now, zone, as you can see, the term that is used is zone or zone rule. Typically a zone is, in our day-to-day life we come across this word zone, which is more like an area. That zone is is termed as like an area or a vicinity. In the Kronos terminology, zone is, I can put it across in such a way that you can say zone is a window within your 24 hours of time. What zone, like what time frame or what duration? Okay, that is one way of putting it in a simple or way, I would say. However, there are different type of zones, and each zone has different settings that we would need to look into. For example, there are five type of zones. First one is consecutive day work, then holiday zone, days of the week, daily shift differential, and weekend differential. Based on my years of experience, I would definitely say that one thing that you will definitely use is the holiday zone. No matter what, you would definitely use holiday zone because every company, any country for that matter, will definitely have holidays, public holidays, national holidays. For that reason, you need to definitely use holidays. The other thing that you would also use, depending on your employer or the client that you're working with or the project that you are into, is the daily shift differential. Daily shift differential are predominantly used for the night shift allowance. If employees working during the night shifts, then they are supposed to or entitled to get night shift allowance as well. So these are the two common ones that you would be using: holiday zone and daily shift differential. And there is another one that could be used quite often, which is days of the week. For example, a particular day like Saturday or Sunday, which you can see in the background, Saturday and Sunday, a typical day in a week. So that even that could be considered as a zone type. So if you want to pay any premium for working on a Saturday or Sunday or any day of the week. The other ones that you see, consecutive days worked or weekend differential, not frequently used. So you may or may not be using it in your projects, but these are the ones that you would definitely be using it quite often. The holiday is obviously the one that will be there in all your projects because every company, as I said, and every country has holidays. um, then these two will also come into picture. But before we dig deep into these zones, let me show you what happens if the zones are not set up. Now, as I always do, a word without zone rule. So if you go to the employee's time card, and let's assume that the employees are entitled to get shift allowance if they're working in the afternoon shift. Okay. Typically, if you are an employee who works 8 to 5 in the morning, from 8 to 5 or 5 p.m. to or rather 9 to 6, these are your standard shift, so to speak. And when you work your standard shift, you don't get any shift allowance. However, if you're working in the afternoon shift, let's say there is schedule 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., or let's say you're working in the night shift, right? Somewhere around 7 p.m. to morning 4 p.m. or 6:30 to 3:30, something like that. Then definitely, based on the company policy, you will get shift allowance for that. So if the shift allowance is not set up, or in our context or the day that or in day 11 we are going to talk about zones. So if the zone rule is not set up, what happens? So if the employee is supposed to get shift allowance for working 3 p.m. to 12, so if I enter 3 p.m. to 12, you will notice that there is no shift allowance. It only gives me the standard hours or the normal hours or the regular hours, the pay code, right? There is no shift allowance. So that is what we are going to see, how we can create shift differential, one of them. And then you will also have holidays. Again, for holidays, I would be covering holidays when we go and cover the holidays. So in this video tutorial, I'll be focusing more on the daily shift differential and the holiday, which is the most commonly used one, and I could say it is the important one. I would come back again to this zone rule when we cover the holidays. Okay, so we need to cross all this building block, or rather cover all this building block, and then go to the holidays, and then we need to first have holidays. So that's the reason I'm going to skip this one now and then relook into that later once along with the holidays. Okay, so we're going to focus more on the daily shift differential because this is again the most commonly used one. And in this video, I'm also going to show you some of the common mistakes that people do, and how we can troubleshoot those mistakes. For example, if you're working from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., after 3 or 4 months, your shift might change, right? You might be asked by your manager to do a regular shift like 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. However, you might still see shift allowance coming in your time card, right? Even if your shift has changed from 3 p.m. to 9 to 6, but maybe you might see your shift is still overlapping, right? So from 3 to 6, so you might still see shift allowance populating on your time card, which is incorrect. So I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot those mistakes, which you need to focus on in your projects or while you are setting up the zone rule. So let's get started. First up with the zone rule. Again, if you haven't noticed how to come across to the zone rule, if you are somebody who is just tuned into day 11 directly, then to access zone, you need to go to setup, and then under the work rule building block, click on the zones. All right, so let's click on new, and let's give it a name, demo shift allowance. Okay, let's say afternoon shift allowance rather. Demo afternoon shift. Again, the good naming convention here would be to give a name which is actually matching to your requirement. For example, if you're creating a night shift, um, shift differential for a night shift, then better to give night shift or night shift allowance or NSA night shift allowance or afternoon shift, something like that. Okay, the zone type that we're going to select is daily shift differential. Again, as I have been saying, if you have any questions on the things that we are not going to cover, like consecutive days worked or days of the week or weekend differential, if you are working on any of the projects and you're stuck or you want to know more about this, just drop me a note in the comment section and I'll revert to you with more details or maybe a job aid that will help you in this type of zones. All right, but as I said, I'm going to focus on most of the most common um, types in my video tutorial, so that a majority of you who are working on different projects can benefit from that. All right, so that being said, I'm going to use daily shift differential to create the afternoon shift allowance. All right, so the most important thing and the important thing here is the shift zone start and end time. So when you have to pay an employee a shift or pay code for shift, night shift or afternoon shift or any shift allowance, you need to define when the zone will start. As I said in the beginning, zone, you can consider it as a window or a time frame. So what is the time frame when the employee will get afternoon shift allowance? So in our example, the time frame is from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. So that's the window, or that's the duration, or in other words, that's the zone where the employee is supposed to get afternoon shift allowance, right? So that's your zone. So the same thing is what you need to enter here as well. Start of the zone and end of the zone. So what is the start of the zone? When the employee should be getting afternoon shift. which is your 3 p.m. So either you can put it at as a military time, or you can straight away put 3 p.m. Okay, and then you can put it as from 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. That is what it is. So if the employee is working during this time, only then he should be getting the afternoon shift allowance. And then whatever you see next are qualifiers. Okay, all these are qualifiers or like conditions. If you, based on my experience, um, it's less often that you might see something like this, but I did use this, but maybe very seldom. However, let me just explain you what these are. So minimum hours. Now, you know that, right? If you work between 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., you get afternoon shift allowance. So there is some dollar amount that you would get when we send the hours to the payroll vendor who is processing your payroll. So you'll get some X amount of dollar amount for that. So, however, to in order to, for you to get that shift allowance, you should be working minimum X number of hours within the zone or X number of hours within the shift. So your employer is creating more conditions for you in order for you to get that shift allowance. It's not that easy that you're going to get it if you work from 3 p.m. to 12 p.m. No, not that easy at times. But more often than not, as I said, you might not use it. But if you are using it, then if you put, let's say, 6 hours here within the shift, so that would mean that you should be working at least for 6 hours, a minimum of shift hours in order for you to get that shift allowance. If you work for 5 hours and 59 minutes, sorry, you're not going to get that shift allowance, right? So that is again within the zone. Your shift might you might start a little early or you might start a little late, but within the zone you must be working at least for 4 hours. Okay, so these are some conditions. Within the zone, you should be working for 4 hours, or within the shift, you should be working for 6 hours in order for you to qualify for that shift differential. And then you have expansion margin. Usually, if there is any expansion margin, you might have seen, or you might have condition where the employer might say that, you know what, yes, 3 p.m. is when the shift start, but at times people come early, so we would want to consider that as well. So expansion margin can expand that by 30 minutes, like early or late. Let's say somebody logging out at 12:30. So you can expand that zone time by entering this. And then you have some qualifiers below as well, which I'm going to tell you in a while from now when we go with the troubleshooting, right? So as I said, for now, I'm going to put a simple zone so that you get to see how the zone rule works, and I'm going to get rid of some of the qualifiers so that you get to see how the zone works without any conditions or qualifiers. And we're going to see that in the time card as well. So let me save this. So as you know, I have just created gave the name and the zone type and the start and end. And let's save and return. And by this time, you must be knowing that where do we assign this zone rule, right? So remember that there are 4 premium pay situations. One is the schedule deviation, rest between the shift, overtime, and zones. These are called premium pay situations because in all of these conditions, you get paid other than your regular hours, right? So if you work overtime, you get overtime. If you work in a particular shift, you get shift allowance. Likewise for schedule deviation and rest between the shift, which we have covered in the previous sessions. So the zones, we will assign that in the combination rule. So let's go into our combination rule, which is already there, and quickly assign the zone rule. There we go. So this is our zone rule, and in the previous session, we've seen overtime and rest between the shifts as well. I'm going to click on save and return, and let's now go to our PCD, pay code distribution, and now assign. Here we will assign what pay code we should be giving in case the employees are working in the afternoon shift allowance. So if the employee is working in the default situation, which is normal, they will get their normal pay code. And if the employee is working in the afternoon shift, the zone that we created from 3 p.m. to 12, now you can give the same pay code or the pay code with the same name, which you might have created already by now in the pay code definition. So this is what I'm going to give afternoon shift. Now you can also give normal hours if you want. So because this is the employee's normal hours as well, but because he's working, the normal hours are between 3 to 12. He is also going to get afternoon shift. So it's up to you if you want to give that afternoon shift only, or you want to bring in normal hours as well. So in my projects, I usually put normal hours as well. But just to differentiate, and you could see that pay code separately, I'm going to use only afternoon shift. All right. So far, if you have any questions and anything, just let me know through the comment section, whatever we've gone through so far. And I'm going to click on save and return. Right. So remember, friends, what is the last step? You might be tempted to go into the time card and test your configuration, but hold on, friends. There is another step where you need to assign the zone in the work rule as well. Again, the most common mistake that people generally do, uh, they just rush into the check the configuration, but you need to make sure you follow all the steps. Else, after testing several times, checking with your mentors, you will realize that, hey, I missed out on assigning this, and that'll be too late because you might have spent some time already, wasted some time rather. All right, so I've assigned the zones here, and that's the last step. So let's check our configuration now, friends. Let's go to the time card, and I'm going to click on save now. So previously you saw that there was only one pay code that was generated. Now this should be afternoon shift allowance based on our configuration. Did we see that change? There it is. There we go. So that's the afternoon shift. Previously it was normal hours or your regular hours. Now the pay code generated is afternoon shift allowance. Okay, so that is how you can create a shift allowance. A pretty simple, straightforward, I would say. Having said that, there could be some qualifiers which I've showed you which can come into picture, but they are seldomly used. Um, so here is how you could also consider a few things. Okay, so in the beginning I told you, right, there is some common, now that you know how to create the shift allowance, I would like to show you some of the common mistakes and how to troubleshoot them. Now let's assume that next week, so this week I'm working 3 to 12, but let's say next week I'm working from some other shift. I'm working from 12 to 9. And as per the company policy, if you're working from 12 to 9, you do not get afternoon shift allowance. Okay. So you're not entitled to get afternoon shift allowance. But hey, what happened? Why am I getting afternoon shift allowance of 6 hours? You can see that here, right? So why am I getting 6 hours of afternoon shift when the shift allowance is we've defined in the zone as 3 p.m. to 12 a.m. Now, this is what I was telling you at the beginning. This is the common mistake, or rather, not the common mistake, but this is something that we really come to see more often than not. And I'll show you how you can fix this. Okay. So our condition or requirement rather from your client is the afternoon shift should be only for employees who work from 3 p.m. to 12 p.m. Anybody who worked before that, let's say 9 to 6 or 10 to or any other shift, even 12 to 9 should not get afternoon shift. All these hours should actually go into your normal hours. So how would you do that? So in the setup of your zone rule, there are qualifiers which I told you I will tell you in a moment, right? So let's go there and explore the option which says right here, let me scroll down, right here. So this is the option that you would be using, friends, which says must start work. So in order for us to qualify, or rather um, pay that shift allowance, the client says the employee will get shift allowance only if they work from 3 to 12. Sure. So that is when you need to use this must start work and say at or after 3 p.m. Okay, so now what we are telling is we are telling the system, hey, anyone who starts their work at 3 or after 3, only they will get the afternoon shift allowance, not somebody who starts their work at 12 p.m. Okay, so if somebody who is working from 3 p.m. till 12 a.m., only those are the ones who are going to get the afternoon shift allowance. So whenever this situation happens, when you see something that you're not supposed to see, the pay code, make sure you check your qualifiers and play around. This is just something that you need to play around in your test environment before you move them to production. So you would get time to, when you're configuring, you need to at times play around and see how things work. Okay, not something that you're going to get right at the first instance or first go, you're going to get everything correct. You need to do a lot of your unit testing or testing before you present this to your client. So play around with it if you are not getting the right values. So I'm going to click on save and return. And then once this is saved, let's go to the time card and click on save now. Okay, so now 12 to 9, all the hours are going into your normal hours. Can you see this now? There is no afternoon shift allowance. So let's go to the previous pay period. There you go. If the employee is working from 3 to 12 a.m., he should be getting afternoon shift allowance. But anybody who works before 3 p.m., in our situation it was 12, there should not be any afternoon shift allowance. So likewise, you can also do for night shift allowance. So you can take it as if you're following my video tutorial. So you might have seen how we go about creating this. So I've shown you how to create for afternoon shift allowance. You can try for night shift allowance, like let's say 6 p.m. to 3 a.m. Okay, how would you go about creating it? Give it a try and let me know how, were you able to create a shift allowance, night shift allowance or not. If you were stuck or you were able to do it still, well and good. Plus, but please drop me a note and tell me whether you were able to create a night shift allowance or not. All right, friends, that was about the zone rule. But let me also quickly tell you about the days of the week, which is another one which you might come across. Days of the week is pretty simple. In the days of the week, what we actually tell is which day, if the employee is working, he will get a premium pay. Okay, let's say Saturday and Sunday. If they're working on a Saturday and Sunday, then they may get a premium pay for working on a Saturday and Sunday. Let's say double time. So if they work on a Saturday and Sunday, they will get double time. So that is all. You need to assign this again in your combination rule, then in your PCD, and then in your work rule, and then you can put a punch on a Saturday and Sunday and see whether the double time pay code is generating or not. These are the most common ones, days of the week and daily shift differential. And amongst these two, this is the one that you will definitely use for sure, especially for employers who have shift allowances. Okay, holidays, we're going to come back again to this. So I will cover this again when we do the holidays. Very shortly, we're going to go up here and cover the holidays, and that's when we're going to revisit the holiday zone. All right, friends, I hope this video you found it informative. If you found this information presented in this video something worth, then just give me a thumbs up. And if you want to learn more about Kronos, please do subscribe and share your feedback as well, friends, with me, how you find this video tutorial or any of my previous videos that you might have seen, or what more you want to see in the future. And any other suggestions or feedback, feel free to put your thoughts as well, and I'll be more than happy to get back to you. Thanks again, and have a great day again, friends.